Okay, folks, this is the official good evening. We're about to start visiting another site in the country. Last week, we missed one of the sessions, but it's going to be, we're going just to give it another week to cover all the 10 sessions that I plan to cover. Some health issues, and again, it looks like everybody around us is somehow connected now to this COVID-19. For a few months, it was something that happened to other people, but now it's catching up with us in the neighborhood as well. But that was not the reason why, just some basic health issues. We are back together, and let's carry on in our virtual tour of the country. And today we're going to go to a site that, unless you came to a long tour in Israel, we usually do not cover. The place is called Lachish or Lachish. I know that you cannot pronounce the Cha, it's not easy for you to do, but the correct pronunciation in Hebrew will be Lachish. And it's one of the key locations in the country. Israel has about 200 massive tells, which means man-made hills, that not all of them are excavated, not even close to that. And they're working in Lachish for a long time, but for some reason, it's not on the list. It takes a long time to prepare the place for visits, and therefore they catch up and keep adding to that. It's a national park, but very few people go to visit because we're still lacking the basic infrastructure, but definitely worth a visit. And therefore today we're going to go to a place which is not that far away from Jerusalem, the very heart of the country, a place which is hardly visited, and I'm glad for the opportunity to be able to present the place for you. And you know how this is going to work. We're going to bring up the presentation in a minute, and then we'll show you some video clips, which I hope will come out smoothly. And if not, at least the audio, I know it's working well. So this is an opportunity to go to see the ancient town of Lachish that for a while was second important only to Jerusalem. And for that reason, this place is mentioned in the Bible quite a lot. And we can even make a connection with Lachish and the Gospel, Book of Acts actually, because the main road to Gaza from Jerusalem was going just by Lachish. And the Book of Acts chapter 8 speaks about Philip converted the Ethiopian eunuch who was on his way to Gaza. That will have to be walking by Lachish, although by then the place was not inhabited. It was a massive ruin back in the days of Jesus as well. But it has a very long history. So let's bring up the presentation. And as always, I need some thumbs up to show me that you can see what I would like to show you. Just a minute. I have my wife's computer open as well. Yep, you should be able to see that now. And surprise, surprise, a new slide, huh? No, just kidding, the same old one that you know so well by now. And let's start with Lachish or Lachish, any way that you like to pronounce it or to call it a massive hill, as you can tell. This is a classical shape of a tell, those layers of civilizations, one above the other. When you see that from a distance, looks like a perfect geometrical trapezoid almost. And keep in mind at the very top of the hill will take us back about 2,500 years ago, and yet we have more than 1,500 years buried under the top. So speaking about ancient sites in the country, Lachish will qualify to be one of the most important ancient sites in Israel. The time frame and the timetable, we're going to go back to the days of the monarchy. We'll speak about the days of the monarchy of Judea, although most everything that was found on top of Lachish will take us to the 8th century BC, and these are the days of King Hezekiah. So what is standing on top of Lachish today predominantly will take us back to the days of Hezekiah. And when they do such excavations, they need to make a decision what layer they're going to excavate and what is the one they're going to reconstruct if they plan to do that. And Lachish will take us back to the days of King Hezekiah. It has an amazing relief of the siege around Lachish was found in the palace in Nineveh in Assyria that was made by the artist, if you wish, of Sennacherib. And the name Lachish is clearly mentioned over there from the whole country, and he conquered 46 cities in Israel. He only reminded, only depicted the one that was the conquest of Lachish. Jerusalem was not conquered, as you can all remember, but Lachish was. So we have an amazing evidence given to us by the king of Assyria about the conquest of Lachish. This will be just a reconstruction and artist's impression how the site used to look like. And as you can tell, most of it is taken by one massive structure, the largest structure that was found in the country from the days of the Old Testament. And once again, takes us back to the days of King Hezekiah. Scholars do believe that that was a chariot section as well. Lachish had a garrison of 50 war chariots on it, and the gates area was fully excavated and reconstructed. There was a siege ram that was found here, the only one in the world from the Assyrian days. And again, it's not a comprehensive excavation that we can go from place to place. They simply dedicated some time to excavate different parts and sections of the hilltop. They did not connect them yet, so the excavation will be completed maybe in the near future. But you need to see the geographical location as well, the mountains of Judea on one place and the coast on the other side. This part of the country is called the Shephelah, or the lowland. This is just another diagram just to show you how the place used to look like. These are the residences, but the place was not really a town. It was more connected to the army's garrison fortress that was built by King Rehoboam as well. After losing most of the kingdom, Rehoboam built 15 fortresses, and Lachish was one of them. We'll see the bigger map in just a minute. You see how important was the location. Well, this map is not the best maybe, but this is the one that we can use. And we're going to speak about a place which is on the road that connected Gaza with Jerusalem. 3 highways went up to Jerusalem. One came from Beersheba. We've been to Beersheba. One was coming from Jaffa and went through Gezer. And the most important one that came from Gaza was this one that went all the way up to Jerusalem. You do see the mountains quite clearly. You see the coast on the other side, and the Shephelah Valley, or the lowland, was the geographical link that connected the coast on one side and the mountains on the other side. It's critical to understand, because we did mention that many times, that historically speaking, the tribes of Israel, the kingdoms of the Israelites, always focus on the mountains. Very seldom there was an attempt to go closer down to the coast and to mingle with all the other civilizations of the world. The Israelites tried to be isolated in a way. They were part of the world trade, but again, the population was quite away from the main roads. The reason was simple. You don't want to mingle with these foreigners, because if you do, you may listen to some new views and you may follow some other gods. And for that reason, the geography of the country provided an excellent way to separate and not to mingle with the others. And indeed, we only read about 1 or 2 kings that dared to leave the mountains, which was the comfort zone, and go down to the plains, like King Hezekiah and King Josiah. But all the others, even David or the conquest in the days of Joshua, they stayed on the mountains. So Lachish is one key location that was on the Shephelah, halfway between the coast and the mountains of Judea. Shephelah means a lowland. I do need to take a sidetrack for just a minute to try to explain that, because when you read geographical descriptions in the scriptures, there is one point of reference, and it's always standing on the mountains of Jerusalem, looking into the rising sun. Everything in the Old Testament, geographical descriptions in Hebrew, are related to that vantage point. Standing on the mountains of Jerusalem, looking into the rising sun, which means east. And for that reason, in ancient Hebrew, in the scriptures, if you have access to it, not the translations, the Bible rarely uses the compass rose. The logic is different. And for that reason, if you stand on the mountains looking into the rising sun, east is called in Hebrew straight ahead, or in front of. So the Mount of Olives, the mount in front of Jerusalem, is not called in the ancient text in Hebrew the mount which is east to the city, but the mount in front of the city. And the Dead Sea, which is east of Jerusalem, is the sea which is straight ahead from Jerusalem, which means everything which is lower than Jerusalem will be called the lowland. It's all relative, because if you were describing the land standing along the coast of the Mediterranean, what will be the lowland for people on the mountains will be the highland for the people that live by the coast. And therefore, the Bible is using a certain logic that we need to understand. And for that reason, everything lower than the mountains of Jerusalem is called the lowland, which is Shephelah. And that's the connection, or that's the logic behind the geographical description, or the lowland, or the Shephelah land. Once upon a time, this land was very rich with sycamore trees. And the Bible said that Solomon had a cabinet minister that was responsible to watch over the sycamore trees that were the best building material in the country, second only to cedars, but cedar wood did not grow in Canaan or Israel. It grew up in the mountains of Lebanon. So that will be the area of the Shephelah, the foothills between the mountains of Judea and Samaria, and the area of the coast. the land of the Philistines in the relevant era and the Israelites on the mountains, that will be the Shephelah. It was a place of mingling, as you understand, and a meeting point between the mountain dwellers and the lowland dwellers. True, the Israelites hesitated to go closer down to the main roads, but the trade was very important, and therefore they will take a daily journey, if necessary, to go from these towns in order to offer their merchandise, buy and sell from the people that were using the main road, but the towns were not right on the highway. And we need to understand the strategic reason behind that. If you live on the mountains and your army is based on light infantry, and you leave your comfort zone to go to engage any enemy down in the lowland, they have war chariots, they have a big advantage over there, and therefore you want to stay on the hills and not be tempted to leave your comfort zone and go down to the valley. Same thing vice versa. If you are a ruler of the Philistines and you live down in the lowland, you'll hesitate to lead your army of war chariots into the hills because you lose all the advantage. You cannot really exercise your war chariots in the narrow mountain path that leads from the coast through the Shephelah up to the mountains. And since nobody was tempted, basically, the meeting point of the two societies will be in the land of the Shephelah. It's about 30 miles long or so, between 10 to 20 miles wide, and it is divided to two different sections. It will be about 1,000 feet closer to the Mediterranean Sea and close to 2,000 feet in the high Shephelah. So the low Shephelah and the high Shephelah, that's what makes this part of the country that was massively inhabited. Most people lived in the Shephelah because the closer you come to the coast, the hills are not that steep, the farmland is much better, and you can catch rainwater that falls on the mountains and use it better for irrigation, not to irrigate terraces on the steep hillsides on the mountains, but the more wide open valleys that you have in the Shephelah area. So that would be some geographical description of the territory. Let's have a few words about the town of Lachish and where we find it in the Bible. First time that we find Lachish is mentioned in the letters of El Amarna. And once again, I need to remind you, because those of you who are with us for the last, well, almost half a year now, we spoke about the letters of El Amarna quite a lot as a major source of information. It was the archive of the Egyptian Foreign Office that was found by Shirchens in 1878. It's the Egyptian archive from the late 1400s BCE, 381 tablets. And Pharaoh of Egypt is corresponding with vassal kings. Most of them are in Canaan. And you can learn from the language how Pharaoh is treating those slaves of his and what kind of language they have when they respond to Pharaoh. And Lachish is found in 4 different letters. The name of the king of Lachish is mentioned. And therefore, if Pharaoh had an interest to correspond with the king of Lachish, he was a very important ruler in the area. So the first time that Lachish is mentioned will be in the letters of El Amarna. By the way, it's not Lachish over there, but Rachish with an R and not with an L. I would wonder why, but in ancient Egyptian cuneiform and hieroglyphics, the 2 letters look very much the same. And therefore, we speak about the first mention of Lachish in the letters of El Amarna. And there we have it in the Bible in so many places, some of which I'm sure that you're familiar with, and some of which are just, not all of the references are here, but just some of them. Well, we speak about the days of Joshua. Lachish, the king of Lachish, was one of the 5 kings of the Amorites that Joshua defeated. This is connected to Joshua 10, when the Bible speaks about commanding the sun to stand still to pursue those 5 kings and to kill them and to conquer the city as well. And it's interesting, in the excavations of Lachish, they found in a cave nearby the city 1,500 skulls, 1,500 skulls that are dated back to the 13th century BCE. Almost no doubt, we speak about the living evidence of the conquest by Joshua. The Bible says that he killed everybody in the city, and maybe those skulls were buried together in a cave. If this is indeed the case, it's a fascinating discovery, which we can easily connect with the conquest by Joshua. So it goes on and speaks about what was the end of the faith of the king of Lachish and all the others as well. We speak about the days of King Rehoboam. Rehoboam was the one that lost the kingdom, to remind you. After the death of Solomon, the kingdom is now divided into 2. Most of the kingdom will end up in the days of King Jeroboam. and Rehoboam, totally frustrated, is going back to Jerusalem, tries to recruit his army. But the prophet by the name of Shemaiah tells him, listen, this is from God himself. You should not go and conquer your northern kingdom or go into any kind of battle. Stay in your country, consolidate your forces. And Rehoboam did a good job, at least reading topography to understand that yes, he lost the kingdom, but the treasury was still in Jerusalem. He had a lot of resources. Many of the people fled from the northern kingdom that took Jeroboam as a usurper and came to King Rehoboam, including many of the priesthood as well. So Rehoboam was the one that built 15 towns. 15 towns, each one was strategically located to guard the road up to Jerusalem, especially after his kingdom was invaded by Shishak, the Egyptian pharaoh. It was Rehoboam that fortified Lachish for the first time. When you speak about the days of Joshua, and the Bible speaks about the conquest of Lachish, it doesn't mean that the Israelites inhabited Lachish. We have to make the distinction. Conquering a Canaanite town doesn't mean necessarily the place was populated by the tribes of Israel. They did not know how to live in fortified cities. It will take time to learn how to change from a nomad to be a farmer, and therefore Lachish was conquered, but we have no evidence that the Israelites back then inhabited the hilltop as well. We do know that beyond any doubt from the days of King Rehoboam. So from the days of Rehoboam, Lachish is the main post on the road to Jerusalem if you're coming from the coast, if you're coming from the area of Gaza. Let me try to bring up one of these, all right? One of the, which one? This one, and see if it's working. I'm always asking for your patience until I'm able to bring that up. Sometimes it takes time, sometimes it's not working. I do want to give it a chance and see. Well, as always, no, it's not this one. So give me a second. It should work sooner or later. One way or the other, I'll be able to do that. Why does it always so complicated? No, you can see it. You cannot see it. So let me see. Bring it here once again. And if I see that it's not working, we'll just give up. Sometimes we do. Yeah, for some reason, I'm doing something totally wrong here. Yeah, forgive me for that. Yeah, this is frustrating, I have to admit.
I'm seated on top of one of the key locations in the country, at the ancient hill, the Tel Lachish or Lachish. Behind me, you see the massive wall. But I'm seated on top of...
Give me a second, we'll try it one last time. And if not, we'll give up because it's about time to learn how to do it correctly. So I don't know what's the problem here. It's always the same problem. Don't go, stay with me, all right? We'll try to make it work. Yes, no, maybe.
Well, I'm seated on top.
No, okay, not working. I really had some hopes, but it's not. Okay, I'll try another one in a few minutes and see maybe that other one is going to work. Just give me one last time to see, because that just has to work. It's impossible that this is not working. No. Okay, we'll just carry on, therefore, with the presentation. Where was I? Can't even tell. How about now? Well, hallelujah. See how it goes.
One of the key locations in the country, at the ancient hill, the Tel Lachish or Lachish. Behind me, you see the massive wall, the largest Old Testament structure found in the country that was built by King Hezekiah. That was just a platform on top of which the main citadel was standing, maybe a palace. Lachish was a key location. The first time you read about Lachish in archaeology is in the days of the El Amarna tablets. El Amarna, a town in Egypt, in 1878, a local farmer was farming the land, and the plow pulled out from the ground a piece of clay with some writing on. He did not know it back then, but he discovered the archive of the Egyptian Foreign Office from the late 1400s BCE. 381 pieces. Pharaoh was corresponding with kings or rulers under his authority, most of them from the land of Canaan, that was the name back then, including the king of Lachish. For the Egyptians that were interested always in Canaan as a gateway to the kingdom of Egypt, and predominantly on the trade route that was going a few miles away from here, that was a key location. And for that reason, the local ruler of the local city-state was under Pharaoh's dominion, and Pharaoh wanted to make sure that the king is behaving, and you read from the text what kind of language Pharaoh is using and how submissive is the local ruler in his response. We also read about Lachish in the scriptures in the days of Joshua. Joshua was the one to conquer the land for the tribes of Israel. They came from east indeed, climbing the mountains of Judea, Samaria, Galilee. But Joshua is also confronting a coalition, he can call it the Southern Coalition, and the king of Lachish, Yafia, is also mentioned side by side with the king of Gezer and other places that were located in the lowland in the Shephelah. Archaeology had told us that the Israelites may have conquered the place, but they did not rebuild it. By the way, they found over that direction 1,500 skulls, and the skulls are indeed from the 12th century BCE. So maybe this is a living testimony and evidence to the conquerors by Joshua, basically destroying the city and killing the inhabitants as he was commanded to do. But nothing was found from the days of Joshua or the days of the judges on top of the hill to indicate that the local Israelite town was built. And since we're very close to Philistine territory, we would assume that maybe the Philistines occupied the place, but there was no thing that was found, nothing from the Philistine days either. And therefore the place was uninhabited for a few centuries. It was King Rehoboam. After losing most of the kingdom, the northern kingdom, to Jeroboam, he was the one that reading topography extremely well, understood that the country was now shrinking. The main threat to his position would be the king of Egypt, and one way to fortify his kingdom was to build 15 community towns and fortresses. Each one was guarding one of the possible invasion routes that led from the coast. The Egyptians are coming from over there into the hill country and then deeper into the mountains. And therefore Lachish was fortified by King Jeroboam. It was one of the mighty fortresses. It was also fortified by King Hezekiah when he planned his rebellion against the king of Assyria, and indeed in the palace of King Sennacherib from Assyria. In the town of Nineveh, just outside Mosul in Iraq of today, they found a whole depiction of the battle. It's in the British Museum today. You see a replica of it, and there's a museum as well. And for the whole country that Sennacherib conquered, and he's bragging for conquering 45 cities, the one he was proud about the most was Lachish. And you see in that depiction, the king is sitting on the throne, and inscription in cuneiform writing above his head says, "This is King Sennacherib, the king of the universe, watching the booty or the plunder from the city of Lachish." So Lachish was a key location, second only to Jerusalem in the days of King Hezekiah, and that's what made the king of Assyria so proud when he spoke about the conquerors. Jerusalem was not conquered, you remember? Lachish was. After the place was conquered and destroyed, it was rebuilt by King Manasseh and King Josiah, and the final blow came when the Babylonians, 586, on the way to conquer Jerusalem, also destroyed Lachish. The place was not built ever since. So what you see today basically will be the massive structure that was the palace. There was a well that was found here as well, 150 feet deep, that goes back about 3,000 years in time. It could not be the only water source. We still looking for the main water source, but the well was the one that was used in the Canaanite era that predate the days of Joshua. The walls were going all around this man-made hill, and we're going to carry on and make a way to see the gatehouse, which was the most important part of Lachish. So we're going to go back to the edge of the cliff and walk around in order to see how the gatehouse used to be. Something very important was found at the gate that I'm going to share with you a little later on. Please come with me. What I'm
Okay, well, somehow it worked. Well, about going back to the gate, how to see the gate, we'll see about that. We'll see if we are able to bring that video up. So carrying on with the information about Lachish, this reference from the scriptures is an interesting one. We speak about the days of King Amaziah, right? And you see the biblical reference, 2 Chronicles 25. Amaziah was the only king of the southern kingdom history that was taken as a prisoner of war. He went to war against King Joash, the king of the northern kingdom. And Amaziah started well. He started as a very successful king. And after he challenged his kind of half-brother, if you wish, or the sister kingdom, he was taken prisoner. And after 15 years, he was given back to Judea. But meanwhile, his son Uzziah took over. And the father and son were not in good terms or good conditions. It looks like the father Amaziah tried to regain his position on the expense of his son Uzziah. And the Bible tells the unpleasant story. There was an open breach in the family, and Amaziah fled to Lachish, that was a real fortress. And Uzziah, his son, sent some assassins to kill the king. He was too much of a threat to his own son. And that's how King Amaziah ended his life in Lachish, just like some people were killed in Megiddo, kings, etc. Once you speak about the royal property and the fortress, it will be a place for potential rebels maybe to flee to, but also a place of assassination, as indeed it was here. So one of those unpleasant stories, King Uzziah basically murdered his father, that was considered to be a threat after coming back from 15 years in prison, being captive in the hands of King Joash, the king of the northern kingdom. Lachish is mentioned also in the book of Micah as an example of sin, as an example of worshiping idols, and some other places in the scriptures. And once again, it's not all the references, but at least part of them. Here is a picture of the well of Lachish. And again, this well is quite impressive. It predates the days of Joshua. It's about 150 feet deep. And again, it could not be the only water source in the area. There had to be another one. They did not find it yet, but whenever they excavate and they dedicate the resources, some amazing stuff is found, and sooner or later, they'll have to find the water system of Lachish as well. So, as we said, the most important, second important, the days of King Hezekiah, it was conquered by King Sennacherib. It was rebuilt by King Manasseh and by King Josiah. And the final blow came with the destruction and conquest by the Babylonians. The prophet Jeremiah mentions very clearly the conquest of Lachish, as you see it here, as one of the last places in Judea that were taken before Jerusalem was conquered by King Nebuchadnezzar. And that would be the end, of course, of the southern kingdom of Judea. So these are some of the biblical references, and let's just zoom in to say a few things about those major structures that were found. This is considered to be the largest one that was found in the country from the days of the Old Testament. And this is only the podium, if you wish, or the infrastructure that was supporting the massive palace, headquarters, fortress that is dated to the days of King Hezekiah. See the size of it. And of course, the depiction that was found in the palace in Nineveh. So most everything on Lachish today is connected to the days of King Hezekiah. Well, if you've been to the British Museum or the Israel Museum, we have a replica. It does show the conquest of the place by the Assyrians. And this is only one section of it, but the inscription here says very clearly, King Sennacherib, the ruler of the universe, is watching the booty carried from Lachish to Nineveh in Assyria. So that will be the plaque over here, the inscription, and this will be King Sennacherib. And again, it's a very gross depiction. In some places, you see people are impaled And you do see how the Assyrian army is doing battle, ladders and bridges to throw against the walls of Lachish in the attempt to conquer it. And the fact that from all the campaign of King Sennacherib, the one place that he is depicting that he won an amazing victory over is Lachish. That would speak for itself how important was the place for the king of Judah, of course, and how important it was for the king of Assyria as well. And it's also interesting to know that in the whole campaign of Sennacherib, Sennacherib himself is never bothered with Jerusalem. He sent one of his generals to try to capture the city. Most of the army is with him, and down in the lowland to try to isolate Jerusalem from all around. He has to conquer those places one after the other. And Lachish was the prime place. It's clearly mentioned in the Assyrian archives. You do see some of the excavation around here. You see the arrowheads and the spearheads all found in the excavations. This one says to the king of Hebron, but this is not ancient Hebrew. This is another language. And the king of Hebron, who was the king of Hebron? That will be hard to tell. It's possible that that will take us back to the days of Joshua. And Hebron was one of the allies that fought against Joshua. So this is predating the excavations from the days of Hezekiah. The most ancient part that was found is that inscription. It's a tile made of clay with the name the king of Hebron on it. I would like to draw your attention to that sketch over here. That's how the hill looks like from the southwest. But when they did the excavations, they were able to establish that all that section is a man-made filling, which means that the natural drop of the ancient hill was much steeper. So steep it was that to try to bring war machines that the Assyrians had, or ladders or bridges closer to the walls would make it impossible. And for that reason, that section here is a siege ram. This is the earliest one in the world, the first one in the world that was found from the days of the Assyrians, and the only one that we know of. And we do know that the Assyrians were master siege, whatever engineers. And this is the first army we can call a professional army. We're not the armies of Egypt, but the armies of Assyria. And therefore we speak about excellent warriors, excellent logistics, including building a whole siege system. And all that section is man-made basically to make that climb easier than to climb such a steep hillside. You do see the access road that goes into the gates area. And we'll see a few things from the gate as well in just a minute. This will be an aerial view of the gate. This is the largest complex found in the country. Things similar to that were found. When you see the gatehouse, it's very typical to gatehouses found in Megiddo and found in Hazor and found in Gezer. Had three chambers on each side. Even Beersheba looks very similar. And when you approach it coming from this way, before you get to the gatehouse, you need to make a 90-degree turn. So that will break any momentum that you have when you start climbing to assault the city. This large plaza will be the gatehouse, and that was the place for all the social, commercial, judicial interaction, and that will be the very gate. So this opening is indicating a chariot town, and it suggests that maybe it was indeed a chariot town. Something brand new, and this is a new discovery of the last few years, and that will indicate once again to speak about the days of King Hezekiah. The Bible speaks about altars at the gates, and if you remember, I suggested in Beersheba that the altar that was found in Beersheba was one of those altars in the gate. We speak about the wrong place of worship in the wrong location for the wrong gods. And therefore, King Hezekiah, when he led his reform, he destroyed all those. And in one of them, amazing, he basically installed the toilets. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that was something that you do. And these were not ever used, but you do that to humiliate, if you wish, the pagan gods that were worshipped here by the Israelites. And you do that as a symbol of humiliation. That's how it was found. This section here was an altar. And the horns were here when they were chopped off. It's clearly evident to see when they chopped off the horns of the altar. And then they simply built a toilet here symbolically to humiliate and to totally destroy the place, and everything then was covered. But what was found here was indicating a place of worship. Again, King Hezekiah was the one that brought most of these down. And it's interesting when we read in the Bible about King Jehu that destroyed the Baal worship that Ahab had installed in the northern kingdom, it speaks very clearly that was procedure. you're destroying those temples, and then you place latrines on top of them as a symbol of humiliation. They were not using those, but just to humiliate the local deities that were worshipped over there. It's interesting to read it in the scriptures and to find one right here in Lachish, which makes it quite an important and an interesting discovery. Well, the most important thing about Lachish will be the Lachish ostrakas. And let me try once again to bring up, if I may, and bear with me once again. I know that I'm pushing it, but again, let's see if that should work now. And somehow that should go easier. No, for some reason it doesn't go any easier. I can't really tell why. Well, thank you for bearing with me. So give me another chance. I don't get it. I keep practicing it. I'm just doing something wrong here. I can't even know what is wrong that I'm doing. I can't tell. This is really frustrating. So let's see once again. Okay. Alrighty, that's what I should do. That's what I do, but it's not working. I'm just jumping right and left, try to figure out what on earth is not working here. But it's just not working. Well. No, that's not it. That's not it. Don't know. Okay, sorry about that. So we'll speak about the ostraka, and then we'll give it one last chance. What about now?
I think it's a single click versus double click.
The top of the site is about 32 acres in size. It dominates the whole valley around it, about 200 feet above the valley. The place was identified by Albright in the end of the 19th century, but the first excavation was conducted by James Starkey in the 30s of the last century. He was the one that excavated part of the gatehouse. He was the one that also found letters, which are called the Lachish letters. One of them is of a significance that I'm going to mention in just a minute. I'm walking down now the complex of the gatehouse, which is the largest one that was found in the country. Structures similar to this were found in Megiddo and Gezer and Hazor, which reminds you of the days of Solomon, although this one was not built by Solomon, but that's what the style of gates back then. And this is the largest complex of gate that was found in the country. I'm going to walk through the outer gate in just a minute, but that will be over that direction. As you're coming inside this large open plaza, you're going to see another set of walls in front of you, and then another gate that you're going to go through to be inside town. That was the central part of the town, not geographically, but that space over here was the center of all the social, commercial, judicial interaction. On top of the hill, there was no room. The houses were piled up one above the other. There was no space to any kind of interaction, which made the gatehouse the place to do that. So it wasn't just an opening in the wall. We speak about a space between two walls, and that would be the place for the sitting magistrates, for example, that were sitting on benches in those side rooms to judge the locals, etc. Yes. There was also a drainage canal. Under where I'm standing right now, there was a drainage canal that went through the outer gate out into the valley. You can also see those bricks made of mud that were the top layer on top of the wall that was made of stone foundation. We found that in Dan, we found that in Beersheba as well. So that was the typical way to build those huge fortresses. The foundations were made of stone, and maybe the very top was made basically of bricks that were made of mud. In the excavations that were done by Starkey, he found 22 ostrakas. Ostraka is a piece of pottery that has some text on it. And these are in ancient Hebrew, and what they call number 4, just a certain number is the most moving of all, and that was found in the side room right here. That was a room in the gate. Somebody, we do not have the name of the somebody, is saying the following: we were watching to the beacons of Lachish because we can no longer see the beacons of Azekah. Well, that brings us to the last days of the monarchy of Judea under King Zedekiah and the rebellion that he led against the Babylonians. It wasn't written here, no doubt. Somebody was watching the beacons of Lachish from a distance, and as long as the beacons were on, it was a sign that the place is still holding on, still in our hands, so to speak. But maybe his town collapsed, and he took the archive with him and fled to Lachish. Because when you say that you cannot see the beacons of Azekah, you cannot see Azekah from here. Azekah is behind the hills. There was simply no line that you can actually make Azekah visible. So he came from another location that he could see Azekah and Lachish. His fortress was taken, conquered, and he fled over here, bringing the archive with him, and that was found here. These are the last days of the monarchy of Judea. But the other part of the story I'm going to share with you takes us back now to the days of King Hezekiah, and we speak about the siege that was laid by the Assyrian army. And when you look through the gates over that direction, you see the whole slope over there, which is not the natural mountainside. This is a man-made slope that was built by the Assyrians. It's a siege ramp, and the only one that was found in this part of the world which is connected to the Assyrians. The Assyrians were not using such siege ramp. You can also see the reconstruction line marked in black on the wall over there. So if you visited this place before the Assyrian army came under Sennacherib 701, the hill didn't look like that. It was much steeper. It would cut through that ramp basically. That was added by the Assyrians. So they could move their war machines and they could move their battering rams closer and closer to the walls of Lachish. Now when the locals saw that, which is really fascinating, they gathered some dirt to the inside of the wall to make their side higher than the Assyrian battering rams. You can see that in the depiction that was found by Laird in the palace of Sennacherib in Nineveh, which is by Mosul in Iraq of today. So this is quite an amazing finding. And they found a lot of Assyrian war objects over there. A lot of boulders that they used to fire artillery, like catapult on the walls of defenders. They found a lot of spearheads and arrowheads and helmets. That would be a very vivid picture how the siege and the conquest of Lachish looked like after the king Sennacherib destroyed this place.
Okay, well, it did work. I hope that we're able to follow at least part of it. Just to bring that to conclusion, the most important thing is indeed the ostraka that we found. And again, some of it is actually moving, as I try to explain in this video. What they call number 4, which is this one, basically speaks about the last days, if you wish, of the monarchy of Judea. And it says very clearly that we are watching, or we did watch the, as you read it over here, now we can no longer see Azekah, we can still see the beacons of Lachish. So Lachish will be the last one that was conquered by the Babylonians. One ostraka here is mentioning very clearly the name of Yahweh. Now this is amazing because we did not find the 4 letters, or the tetragram as it's called, of the name of God in Hebrew in that many documents. This is the first one that was found so clearly mentioning the name. All right, the name of God in Hebrew as it was written back then. The language did not change over the years. The alphabet characters did. Today we write Hebrew in Aramaic characters, so same language, different characters for the alphabet, but this would be the way to pronounce the name of God in the ancient characters of Hebrew. So these 22 ostrakas were found in the gates of Lachish in 1932-33 by Starkey, who was the first man that excavated anything in Lachish. He was murdered, by the way, on his way to Jerusalem by a local Bedouin bunch that basically ambushed his vehicle, and that was in 1934. So when we speak about Lachish, we do speak about an amazing site. And again, not yet prepared for visits, at least not to make the infrastructure adequate to everybody. You need to be a little adventurous to go and see the site. But I do hope that next time when you come to Israel, and you will be back sooner or later, I will be able to add that to our list as well. Because again, we're all drawn to the places which are so well known. We go to Caesarea, we go to Capernaum, we go to Masada. Yeah, for good reason. These are must-see, no doubt. But we should add to these locations many other pieces. And the only problem is that there are issues of liability. If the site is not prepared, nobody wants to be sued by nobody else, so they just don't open the sites. So now, when due to this pandemic, I'm happy to tell you that at least they're working and they're preparing the sites. You know, Megiddo is closed for about 8 months now. All right, Megiddo is a place that only tourists go to. Israelis don't go to Megiddo because it's not interesting to any Israelis, and they are making good use of the time. They keep adding to that. They reconstructed all of Solomon's Gate in Megiddo. So the fact that there are not that many people who visiting, at least they're working on the sites and have more adequate infrastructure in order to welcome people when they will come back. And hey, we can hardly wait to see all of you back in the country. Well, that will be it for today. And once again, it's good to see all of your faces now. Hello, everybody. That's what I see. I'm not sure what can you see on your screen, but I can see all of you that joined us. It's so nice to see your familiar faces. Okay, folks, feel free to unmute yourselves. We only have about 15 or so. If you have any comment, any question, anything at all, by all means. I'm not going back to bed. It's almost 5 o'clock here and it's over. So, you know the story. This is my usual story. So anything that you would like to chat on?
Ronnie, I think your computer issue, it might be a single click versus a double click.
Hey, listen, this is the most embarrassing thing that happens to me. It's to try to, to figure out how to do it right. And I do practice before we, I don't know, I'll find a formula. And I talked to Zoom Israel, and they tell me there's not much we can do to improve the quality of the filming, right? It just, that's the way it is, and that's the capabilities of today when you want to broadcast any kind of movie. It's not broadcasted very smoothly, so not much we can do regarding that. But hey, I'll try. And I'm telling you, the very last session that we're going to have, I'll finally master it. It's going to be so smooth and so nice.
Always.
Just give
It happens, Ronnie. It happened to me today too. When I was trying to do something at work, I had practiced, and then when it went real, of course, it didn't work. So it's just not you.
Of course, I'm telling you, Murphy knew nothing about Zooming, but he was a genius. So if can something go wrong, I guess it will go. Folks, any other things? It's an opportunity. Come on.
Hey, Ronnie, I have an offbeat question. Are you ready for that yet?
Yeah, sure, please.
Okay. So I'm studying the tribes of Israel and all the things connected to them, a letter of the alphabet, a month on the calendar. Were the days or the hours of the day also connected with each individual tribe?
No, the hours of the day usually are mentioned to us in like sections of periods. All right, the day was divided to 6 4-hour kind of periods. And the Bible speaks about the second watch of the night, the third watch of the night, the fourth watch of the night. What does exactly mean? It's hard to tell. They believe that the second watch was between 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. Interesting, even in the military today. All right, this will be, that's how you divide sometimes night when you give assignments, all right? Who is responsible to do what? We speak about watches, first watch, second watch, third watch. So maybe it goes back to biblical days. I cannot really tell you since when in Israel, all right? We are using the clock, all right? Sundials were found, and the most ancient one was found in Qumran. So we do know beyond any doubt that the temple authorities used that. But even then, the Bible speaks about the days of the evening sacrifice, the time of the morning sacrifice, the time of the evening sacrifice. So no, the day was not divided to 24 hours. It was divided to 12, basically to 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of evening, although it's not that simple as we all know. And of course, for temple purposes, everything evolved around the temple. When you speak about time, Everything evolved around the temple and the temple sacrifices. So it speaks about the first watch for the priest to officiate, and the second watch for the priest, and the third watch for the priest, 6 watches. And it speaks about the time of the morning sacrifice and the time of the evening sacrifice. When the Bible speaks about the prophet Elijah on top of Mount Carmel, it speaks about the prophets of Baal that were calling to their God until the days or until the time of the evening sacrifice. And only then Elijah said, well, my turn now, come closer to me. So that's how the day was divided back in the days of the temple.
Okay.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Any other things? Well, folks, it's elections in the U.S. are coming real close, and I don't know about you, but we are excited around here. I know exactly what you mean, Lisa. But hey, listen, we are watching and we are interested, and you do understand that for the state of Israel, these are critical. And without making political opinions, we did use, so to speak, the 4 years of President Trump extremely well here in the country. Of course, the U.S. was all behind that. Many good things happened. You don't have to be of any kind of the Israeli politics to understand that we were supported. The embassy moved to Jerusalem. Jerusalem officially recognized the Golan Heights, etc. And now the deal with the Arab Emirates. So I will wait. We hate to think about an administration who is not supporting that. And, again, American politics are American problem, but not quite so. It's really affecting the whole world, as you understand. And we are watching carefully. And we'll see what will be the outcomes. We believe that regardless who will be the power, who will be the party, the U.S. is committed and it's behind the state of Israel. But some administrations can be more supportive than others. So we'll see. Time will tell. So you do understand that we are as excited as you are, watching from a distance and quite in awe, we have to say, because, hey, I don't think that you experienced that diversity in America ever before. Same thing in Israel. Same thing in Israel. Something happens in the world, and it's good, bad, time will tell. But I do know that it's new. It's new to all of us what we are experiencing, and we'll see. I wish we were aliens living outside, in kind of an outer space someplace, coming down to planet Earth, right, to watch for the first time. What would be our opinion about what's going on? I don't know. There's so much disinformation, so much deception out there. So it's really so hard to follow, to know what can you trust and what is the real reliable sources. I know we are all part of that confusion. I guess all we can do, and I'm sure that all of you, I'll have your very loud amen for that, is to trust in what we read in the scriptures and just, trust in God. It works so far, so there's no reason why it won't work in the future.
Yeah,
Any other
just wanted
things?
you to know we are praying for you, especially with the Ghislaine Maxwell stuff. I don't know if you followed any of that, but that would directly affect Israel. So
No, I don't know what you mean by that, but
okay.
What do you mean?
I'm sorry,
What do you
Kelly.
know what you mean about Ghislaine Maxwell in Israel?
There seem to be some ties, and I don't know if it's made up ties or if it's not made up ties, but we are praying for Israel.
Did you say Glenn Maxwell?
Yeah.
Well, enlighten me. I don't think that I heard the name.
Ghislaine, it's spelled Ghisliane.
Okay.
Maxwell, and her father, Robert Maxwell, was a huge Israeli supporter.
Oh, yeah.
Right now, she is in jail with some pretty heavy charges against her. She will be going to trial. I don't know if she's currently at trial or if she's going to be going to trial. But there's some pretty serious things.
If I can interject, this is the Jeffrey Epstein case.
Yeah.
Ronny, if you're familiar with
Hey,
that.
listen, it looks like everything is connected somehow to Jeffrey Epstein. I don't know. Everywhere you go, something is connected somehow to him. But you had the former Prime Minister, Ehud Barak, who was a close friend. Nobody accuses him for anything. You could be a friend of Epstein and not be, I guess, a total criminal. But yeah, the name is being mentioned quite often in connection to Israeli, whatever.
Yeah. So just letting you know that we are praying for you, very much so.
Okay, well, thank you. We can use those prayers, and again, things are things are getting interesting. In the Gaza, up in Lebanon, never a dull moment, never a dull moment. Always something goes on. And again, we are so much part of it that we don't have the luxury to view it from a distance. We are definitely part of it. And things in Israel as well, the diversity here, the demonstrations and the level of hatred is, like never before. When we need unity more than ever before, we're in the very opposite direction, unfortunately. Okay, folks, well, thank you for sharing, and I hope that you were blessed by the information. And I'm sorry once again about all the video things. I guess I owe you 7 minutes for today, just looking for the right video and bring it up. I'm paying my debts. I'm paying my debts, and all right, folks, some of you I'm going to see tomorrow. All right, so I'm behind. I'm behind with the YouTube. I'll be quick to admit everything will be there eventually, and I'll stay in touch with you to let you know what is it that you can watch already. Thank you so much, and may the God of Israel richly bless all of us.
And you.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.